Morning, my name is Sarah Fosholtz. I serve as the board administrator for the Texas State Board of Examiners of Marriage and Family Therapists. And I'll turn it over to Chair Murthy. Maybe I should do some housekeeping. As it says on the agenda, when public comment, the agenda item is announced. If you've joined by computer, please use the raised hand feature to indicate you'd like to provide a public comment. Those who raise a hand will then be unmuted to give public comment. After all those who raised a hand have been given an opportunity to provide their comment, I will call upon and unmute those who have joined the meeting by telephone. When providing public comment, please identify yourself and whether you are speaking individually or on behalf of an organization. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise directed by the chair. In lieu of providing public comment during the meeting, you may submit written public comments via email directly to executive leadership or legal staff. Please send that email to general@bhec.texas.gov before or during or after the meeting. Any written public comment received is submitted to the board members for their consideration if it's received before the meeting, but is not read out loud. At this time, I received no public comment, written public comment that has not been provided to the board in regard to, for example, the rules portion of this agenda. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chair Merchant.
Okay, well, this meeting is called to order and we're going to begin with roll call. So I am Dr. Lisa Merchant and I am a professional member. And I guess, Janine, will you go next?
You're muted, Janine.
Or Sarah, would you rather do roll call where you just call us off?
Either way. Dr. Bateman, are you present?
Present.
Dr. Barty, present?
Present.
Mrs. Husband Thompson?
Present.
Mr. George Francis IV?
Mentally and physically present.
And Miss Janine Smith? Are you muted?
Present.
Thank you. And Reverend Dr. Scoma?
Present.
No.
I hear you, Miss Smith. And Pastor Scoma, are you muted?
I am not. I'm present.
Thank you. I do not see Daniel Parrish. And I think that's it for the board members.
Okay. So our first item on our agenda is to review our minutes from our last meeting. So let's see here. At this time, does anybody have any discussion about the minutes from the last meeting, or can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented from the last meeting, please.
Okay, is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, can we do raised hands?
Sure.
Okay, let's do raise your hand if you approve the minutes. Okay, and that's unanimous, we're good. Okay, next is discussion and possible action to elect a vice chair of the board. And so is there anybody who would like to make a nomination?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that for vice chair of the board, I would like to present Dr. Scoma as a candidate for that, please.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Okay. Motion passes. Number 4 on our
Congratulations, Dr. Scoma.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Ken, that worked out really well, man. I love your
did.
style.
Seemed like a setup, honestly. A little bit.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Number 4, discussion and possible action to re-elect or replace our public delegate, the Texas Behavioral Health Council, which right now is George Francis. So would anybody like to make a motion?
Madam Chairwoman, I would like to renominate Mr. Francis, who's done such an incredible job with a brand new environment. He's pioneered the trail for us. So I'd like to nominate him again.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second that one too.
Awesome. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous.
Thank you.
And thank you, George, because just like Anthony said, your work there has been absolutely amazing. And so I think all really appreciated the work that you've done there. So thank you. Okay, then next on our agenda, gotta find my agenda again, is discussion on possible action to re-elect or replace our professional member delegates to BHEC. And because Ken's position is expiring in February. And so can I have a nomination for our professional delegate?
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Janine Smith. I know that she has had a lot of work and prep previous to this. I think she would be an excellent replacement.
Can I have a second?
I
I'll
second the
second
motion.
that one.
Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, that is, unless Janine, are you going to vote differently? Okay,
I'm voting for myself.
yay, okay, good. Okay, then that was also unanimous, and so that also passes. Okay, moving right along. Number 6 is discussion and possible action regarding the rules. So Sarah, is it possible to put these on the board or to share these so that we can all look at them together?
Yes, I will be sharing that right now.
Okay, so our first rule change is regarding 801.204 on the licensing of military service members, veterans and their spouses. And so everything that is underlined is the proposed rule change. And then I believe we only had one comment on it. And so if you'll scroll down, we can see the comment brought to us by Ms. Jody Elder. And so I'll give you all a moment just to read through her comments. Okay. So essentially at this juncture, we have an opportunity to respond to Ms. Elder's comments or Dr. Elder's comments. And so is there a way, I guess I propose that perhaps we just thank her for her comments because she seems to be pretty supportive of the rules changes. So does anybody have anything other than thank you, Ms. Elder, for your Dr. Elder for your response?
I appreciate her as a partner. She's very supportive of us, so thank you.
She's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. Okay. So Sarah, is there anything that we need to do besides for responding to the comments? Is that all that we're doing right in this meeting, is just responding to the comments?
You'll also need to determine your recommendation to the council. For example, you may choose to recommend adoption as proposed or adoption with non-substantive changes or withdrawal of this rule. proposal, et cetera.
Okay. Do I have a motion regarding what we would like to do with this rule, whether we want to adopt it, amend it, retract it?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept it as presented and recommend that to the council.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. And give me a minute to scroll through. That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the second, well, let Sarah finish typing.
Okay.
Okay, the next rule change is 801.305 concerning the schedule of sanctions. This actually, I guess, Sarah, how is the best way to handle this? Do we respond to Dr. Elder's comments, even though we had to resubmit it?
I would like some advice from the attorney. So just to catch everyone up in case I haven't done it adequately so far on, and I apologize to the board for not recognizing the error sooner, but staff withdrew the proposal on November 30th and a corrected proposed was published on December 11th. The public comment period for this corrected rule then will be closed on January 11th. And we have proposed a joint meeting with the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council, tentatively scheduled for January 12th, beginning on or at or after 11:30. So this board can attend and look at the rule then. So at this time, this proposal has been withdrawn. So I don't believe there's any action that the board can take. And Attorney Patrick or Attorney Brian, should the board make response to the commenter at this time or wait and see if we get a comment on the corrected proposal?
You're correct. There's not an official action that needs to be taken right now because we needed to withdraw it because of the issues with how it was published and re-propose it with the correct language. You can certainly discuss her comments if you want to because she submitted them, but we wouldn't have anything to propose or to vote on to send up to the council for adoption, to propose to adopt. So I think if you're fine if you want to discuss them, what she submitted, but if you're interested.
Why don't you, Sarah, just go ahead and put up her comments. And exactly what was the error, if you don't mind me asking? What was the error in the...
There were several, unfortunately.
The proposal of the rule was to change in the matrix a warning letter and conditional letter of agreement to reprimand to match the other boards' matrices more closely. Am I sharing?
No.
I haven't hit share, sorry. So you can see in red here where the warning letter, for example, on 80144K was supposed to have been changed to a level 5 reprimand. That doesn't mean that staff or the board cannot do a warning letter if circumstances, mitigating factors warrant, or increase it from the reprimand if aggravating factors warrant. But this is the baseline for a first-time offender type of thing. And this would align then with the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council. Likewise on 80144L and 80144N there's two of them because the provision was written, is as a paragraph and there's a couple of sentences that make it different. So unfortunately the probated suspension got changed and not the conditional letter of agreement. So all of that's been corrected to maintain the probated suspension and remove the pieces that we wanted to change to reprimand. So, and there was some also mishap in the publication of the rule, because this chart, when the register publishes it, they publish the text and then they see the chart at the end, and it's at the end of the publication, only the chart was not there. So, so we kind of had a snake bit process for this rule. And I'll scroll down now to Dr. Elder's comment here.
Well, I wonder if we can thank Dr. Elder for her comments and let her know that this is being basically just what's happened, that we are resending it back to the Texas Registrar because of the errors, and that hopefully it will include the actual hyperlink. I don't know, just thank her for her support and let her know that it is being republished. The corrected version is being republished in the Texas Registrar.
So I understand that I'm being directed to communicate that to Dr. Elder.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I mean, that's our response, right? The board's response to Dr. Elder is just to thank her for her comment and let her know that it's being republished.
And the primary reason for these changes is to be more in line with the other boards?
Yes.
Attorney Patrick, do you have more to add on that regard?
I can. There's a lot of reasons for these particular changes, but one of them, yes, is to line up with all the other types of schedule of sanctions. Conditional letters, agreement, and warning letters are still something by rule that can still be done. So there are rules for it, and I believe there's also a policy that was adopted to help staff and ISC panels utilize CLAs and warning letters. So so they're still there to work, but one of the big issues that will come up with this, if they're left in the rule, is if a case is taken to a SOA hearing, the SOA judge will look specifically to this schedule of sanctions and say, I'm going to discipline somebody based on that whatever the specific rule 1, 2, 3, 4, and whatever sanction it says, and it'll be hard to find them to move around that. And so if the actual schedule says warning letter, and we ended up going to a hearing and they just, for them to issue a warning letter, why wouldn't have we just issued the warning letter or the CLA in the first place? The reason why we would have got there is we would have had a whole bunch of aggravating circumstances that then we'd have to prove. So it makes the burden of proof on the agency to prove the violation doubly so to move off of that particular recommended sanction. So anyways, there's a lot of reasons I could go into for why it should be taken off, but people should definitely know we're not doing away with CLAs or warning letters. They'll certainly be utilized, and I know that they are being utilized. So they're not going away. They're just not listed specifically in the schedule of sanctions. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and that kind of addresses what Dr. Elder was saying, that she was that the board somehow reserved the right to utilize CLAs and warning letters if mitigating factors, and so it's not a removal of those. It's
Right.
it gives us a little bit of flexibility, maybe.
Correct. Yeah, correct. They can certainly, with aggravating or mitigating circumstances, move off of those. But when we talk about a schedule of sanctions, a CLA and a warning letter are non-disciplinary. So it's kind of odd to put what would be on a disciplinary list, a non-disciplinary action. So, but again, they can and will be and are being utilized. So absolutely. So that's why anyone that had it, we just set it to the lowest possible level so that due to mitigating circumstances, they could be bumped down to a CLA if it was a level 5 or something like that.
Good, thank you.
Okay, any further comment? Okay, then since we don't need to take an action at this point in time, we will move on with our agenda. And so now we're on to discussion and possible action regarding public comment on the concerning 801.206, licensing of persons with criminal convictions. And there were no comments on that, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
So is there any further discussion regarding these, regarding this rule?
Chair Merchant, I would add one thing. If some of you will recall, when we were originally discussing this rule, Sarah, can you scroll up to where it talks about the deadly weapon finding? Okay, number 3 there, where it says a felony offense wherein the judgment reflects. If you recall, the governor's office had expressed some concern about that, but I just wanted to let y'all know I have visited with the governor's office. We've discussed it back and forth. They run it up through their GC, and long story short, they're fine with it now. If we're fine with it, they're fine with it. So we won't be revisiting that particular provision. That's something I told y'all we may have to come back to later on, but the governor's office said, no, we're okay with it now. So you don't have to worry about revisiting it.
Daryl, while we're on that point, I was going to ask, did we have any other issues with the governor on this? I know there were a few things we thought might be, they're good with all this?
Yeah, they're good.
Great.
We're good to go.
Thank you for advocating for us in that way, Daryl. I appreciate it.
Sure. And we've actually modeled all the other board rules off of what we did here on this rule. So everybody will actually look exactly the same, except for where it talks about the MFT Practice Act. We just substituted the others.
Excellent. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding this rule?
I'd like to move that we adopt this rule as stated.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Make a second.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. Okay, moving right along. Now we are on to number 7, which is discussion and possible action on committee reports. So as I think Sarah sent y'all in an email, all the committees are required in our regular meetings to give a report of the things that they have been doing. To my knowledge, none of the committees have met since our last meeting. So I think that we will just go through the through A, B, C, and D, and if you have a report, you may give it. If you don't have a report, you could just say that at this point in time, we don't have a report. And then our next item in the board report, we will kind of talk about the different committees and kind of their responsibilities and talk about things that you might want to include in a board report in the future. So for the Licensing Standards Committee, I am the chair of that, and we did not meet. And so right now I do not have any kind of report to give unless Sarah has something that she would like to add.
I provided for the board members, it's labeled as item 8, some information about the board's committees, the names of the committees, who's currently assigned to that committee, and what rules might apply to that committee that you might need to be aware of if you're serving on that committee. What I understand from the functioning, this is a new process for most of us, and especially for the new board members. Whereas we used to have public meetings for the committees, based on our attachment to HHSC. Now we will, and I think it will be a better customer service, especially on the licensing side. Now staff will consult with up to 2 members of the committee if on an as-needed basis. So you may get emails or requests for Zoom meetings or phone calls from staff to discuss a particular licensing issue or some element of a compliance with a board order or that kind of thing. And we're hoping then that that would be a more efficient response and a more efficient operations for moving those licensing issues or those complaint issues through the process, rather than waiting up to 3 months until the next board meeting to bring it to a committee. My understanding is that staff will compile a report on the compliance activities, and you'll receive that on a quarterly basis. They'll provide that to me, and I will disseminate that to you in your board materials. And you can either have the committee chair give that report, or if you'd like for me to give that report, I can do that in the meeting, however you'd like to handle that. Similarly, there'll be some complaint reporting on a quarterly basis, like you saw at the October meeting, if you're a veteran member. Again, I'll get that through staff and provide that through your board materials. Activities like a licensing issue, does this course meet the requirement? That was deemed to be not necessarily required reporting, those kinds of activities of the board. But I can report, for example, the chart that's on the website, we can reflect that and show where we are with new applications and that kind of thing. And certainly in the board administrator's report, I can give you more information about specific operations or specific challenges or accomplishments as they go along. So I was hoping to give you some information in the 9 pages that's labeled as number 8, just to help you get oriented with the committee work under this new process. Are there any questions so far, or do you have any concerns that I can address? Okay, please feel free to email me or call me as things arise, or if there's another staff member that can assist you, please reach out and we'll do the best we can to get you a timely answer to any of your questions.
So do we need to go through the rest of 7, or can we just move on to 8?
I don't think there needs to be any action on 7. I added it to the agenda just to point out that it is in the board rules. And so I was planning to keep it as a standing agenda item unless there's some other direction. If maybe at some point you might want to consider whether that needs to be in rules, or whether you like it in rules because it provides a committee member to report anecdotally, this seems to be a problem, or we might be able to do this better. Or so I think right now we keep it as a standing agenda item to allow that opportunity as we're all doing this new process.
I agree. Okay, well, let's move on to number 8, which is report from the board chair concerning challenges, accomplishments, lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing I just want to do is I want to welcome all of our new board members. I'm really excited to have Russ and Janine and Daniel with us. And I really am looking forward to us actually being able to meet in person so that we can kind of get to know each other a little bit better. So just again, because we are new, I think it would be fun for us to kind of introduce ourselves and tell us just a little bit about who you are. And so I am Lisa Merchant. I have met Janine and Russ before at TAMFT conferences and just professionally. I teach at ACU in the Marriage and Family Therapy program. I live in Abilene, originally from Houston. And I've been on the board. This is my second, it'll be 2 years in January. And something that I have done that probably none of y'all have is I have slid into 500 gallons of Jell-O twice. So it was an item on my bucket list, and I actually got to do it, and I was very excited. So anyways, swimming in
I
Jell-O
was
is
going to ask, on purpose or not on purpose?
totally on purpose. Like I paid money to do it, you know, like it was like a fundraiser. So like I paid money to go like slide into like a baby pool full of Jell-O. And anyways, lots of fun. So that is the thing that I've done that probably y'all probably have not. So who would like to introduce themselves next?
I'll go if we're going to go alphabetically, maybe, or something like that. Russ Barty, Fort Worth, Texas. I'm on faculty at Texas Wesleyan University. Been in the Tarrant County area about 30 years. Married my high school sweetheart. Got 3 kids and 8 grandkids. We all live within 12 miles of each other, so we're always in each other's stuff, which is great and fun with everything like that. I've been on the TAMFT board for several years, and recently rotated off and then applied for this, and looking forward to continuing being involved in the marriage and family therapy world within the state of Texas. One thing I've done, I didn't do Jell-O, but I did jump off the Sky Tower in Auckland, New Zealand twice. And that's like 600 and something feet straight up, straight down in a free fall bungee thingy with that. And so that was kind of a fun thing.
Wow. Is that like scary? I just like, it was like a bungee, so like a.
Yeah, you go up there and you put the suit on, and then they strap you, and then you walk out on a platform. And this was in summer, and our summer, but it's winter there. It was starting to sleet, and it was icy up there on top. But you walk out on this platform, and it's just a corrugated platform that extends out, and there's nothing around you, and they say, so how do you want to do it? You want to go feet first, head first, or free fall, or what? I said, I don't know. So the first time I went feet first, and that was good, and I said, oh, this is great. The next time I went head first, which was really fun, and you kind of spin around, but you're strapped in, and it's a free fall drop, and then it bungees and then but there's this giant red target circle down at the bottom that you're supposed to aim for, and not splat on is the thing. But it was the first time I was scared. The second time I was thrilled. It was great.
Excellent.
Highly recommend it.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Russ. Ken, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Ken Bateman, marriage and family therapist and LPC supervisor. Professor Emeritus from Amberton University, taught 23 years there in their counseling program. Continue to have a private practice right now in Richardson, Texas, with 6 other therapists of all sorts, psychologists, social workers, and LMFTs and LPCs, and a psychiatrist that Russ, you may need to see if you're jumping off buildings like that, but anyway, and I am been on the board for a full term, and it ends in February. And I have chosen to not be reappointed because yesterday I turned 76 years old, and it's getting close to time for me to retire. So I didn't want to commit to another 5-year extension when I didn't think I would complete a 5-year extension. Somebody else needs to be on. Probably the most interesting thing that you don't know about me is that I have performed at the Eisman Theater as a ventriloquist with the senior fathers of Dallas County.
So you can talk without moving your lips. Is that what you're saying you could do?
As long as I have a good dummy.
Can you go testify with me at the legislature? I'll be your dummy.
Yeah, well, but the question then would be with the legislators, who is the dummy or who is, well, never mind.
Well, happy birthday, Ken. And that is amazing.
Thank you.
So, George, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm George Francis IV. I'm the public member, one of the public members on the board. I have 3 kids. I have George Francis V, Grayson Forrest Francis 5.1, and Gianna Carmen Francis 5.2, legal names. I recently made a switch on my public sector side from Dell to Amazon. I run Tech University for Amazon globally. And so finally in the education space that I kind of wanted to be in. So I'm very excited about it and helping people do new things in their life. So Austin, Texas, born in Texas, raised in Detroit area. Trying to think of something interesting though. I travel a lot. I'm getting kind of lonely not traveling. I've been to 54 countries, 6 continents. I'm hoping to make it to 60 before I retire. In the 7th continent, my wife does not want to go down to Antarctica. And so trying to figure out if I'm going to force her to do that, which I can't do, but I can encourage heavily, or go with my best friend to do that. And so I'd really rather have her. She's been with all the other continents with me. I met her in graduate school at University of Texas at Austin. She had a better grade than I did. And I thought that I probably should get to know her better and realized that I should probably marry her because she was smarter than me. So.
So which country is next?
That I haven't been to, or that I will go back to as soon as COVID is lifted?
That you haven't been to yet.
That I haven't been to yet? Oh, that's a difficult one. Nicaragua. So I've been to Honduras for fishing. I've never been to Nicaragua. I have a desire to see what it's like. I like Central America a lot. So I will say one other interesting thing. When Disney opened, I took my family and each of my children's best friend to Disney for 2 weeks during COVID. It was the safest place on the planet. And I highly recommend it. Well, now it's not the same, but that was probably the scariest thing that I've ever done. And at the same time, the fact that there was no wait on any ride and they had just opened the Star Wars land, and I got to go on the Millennium Falcon ride 4 times in 25 minutes was pretty spectacular. So.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, George. Evelyn, will you go next?
Sure. So my name is Evelyn Husband Thompson. I have had the distinct privilege and honor to serve on this board for 5 years. I have learned so much. I'm serving as a public member. When the governor's office interviewed me and asked me what qualifications I brought to the table, I shared that my entire family is crazy and we are in incredible need of good counseling and care. And so I'm a proponent of that because it's a very vulnerable place. But in all seriousness, so I had shared privately with the board before. My first husband was an astronaut and he was killed on the space shuttle in 2003. And obviously our family went through incredible trauma and tragedy. And because of my strong faith and through many, many people helping us, we have not only survived, we have thrived through this. And I have just considered being able to serve on this board, and other opportunities that I've been able to serve have really, to me, have been things that are very, very important. I also serve on a board for fatherless boys. And so that is something near and dear to my heart because my own son was only 7 when Rick died. So, but I have just loved this tremendously. I feel like Forrest Gump on the board because everybody is super smart with many, many degrees and qualifications. But I really love this because I feel like it's just so critical that we provide good care for people at their most vulnerable time. Oh, and something I've done that's unusual. So I've done unusual things, but I think that one of the weirdest, hardest ones was that I was asked to direct a symphony, which I did. And I thought I did pretty good. And then I asked the director afterwards, the conductor, how I did, and he said it wasn't that great. So I was pretty much destroyed over that, and we'll never, ever, ever do that again.
Thank you, Evelyn. I appreciate that. Okay, and let's see here. I guess Anthony, you're next.
Very good. Anthony Scoma, I believe we came on the board at the same time. Is that correct, Lisa? So it's been 2 years, a little over. And grew up in the Fort Worth side of the DFW Metroplex, North Richland Hills specifically. Came to Austin to attend the University of Texas, where two monumental things happened in my life. I met my wife, Deanna, who is a CPA. By the way, longest tax season ever. If you know a CPA, be kind to them. That thing lasted forever this year, and she's just getting over that. I have two kids, one in her freshman year in college and another a sophomore in high school. Second thing that happened at UT is I changed plans from wanting to be a lawyer since I was 8 years old to being called into ministry. So left UT, went to seminary, got a Master of Divinity with a emphasis in counseling, and came back to Austin to start a church 17 years ago, planted a church that I still pastor here in Southwest Austin. Got a doctorate in ministry and historical theology, but my dissertation was kind of interesting to this context, was about Murray Bowen's emotional systems theory, and it's linked to the development of Orthodox Trinitarian theology. So you need to sleep and you got a few hours and want to read through 200 pages, you can do that. So interesting thing about me, maybe unique thing about me, I was trying to think, let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see if it'll let me do this. Oh, yeah, it looks like I have permission. I was named an honorary elder in the tribe of the Araku people of northern Tanzanian highlands. And so that was quite an experience. Spent a week there with those fine folk in Tanzania, and was a speaker, and our church provided about 45 motorcycles. That is the motorcycle, the piki as they call it, is the #1 effective tool for pastors to spread the gospel in Africa, because they're reliable, they're affordable, and they can get you all over the country. So that was kind of fun. And like George, I like to travel, and I'm feeling very stir crazy. Deanna and I, we had our 25th anniversary this year, and we're supposed to go to Argentina. I was going to be speaking for a week, and then we were going to be touring around, and COVID killed that. So I too have travel plans ahead, but that's me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Janine?
Morning. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm Janine Smith, and I'm in private practice. I'm an LMFT and an LPC supervisor, and I live in Austin, Texas, and have been very involved for MFT issues, basically on the government front. I pretty much led the charge for the things that we fought against, which were our diagnosis lawsuit that we had, and then Sunset, and then BHEC. So I have testified in front of this board, felt like a jillion times, and down at the Capitol a jillion times. So I feel really honored to be on the other side of the desk now, and still be able to be involved in it. So I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm quite as adventurous as this group is. I haven't slid into Jello, and never been adopted to a tribe, and I am not jumping off anything except the front porch. But on a dare in college, I joined a pageant. So there. So all the other girls were pageant girls, and they were bringing in racks and racks and racks of dresses, and I had 3 that I just kind of carried into my room. So every night I'd be like, this one or this one. Am I frozen?
You're frozen for a moment. So how did you do? Did you win?
I did not win the Miss Texas pageant, clearly, but I did win, obviously, the small Miss West Texas pageant. So, yeah.
What was your talent?
I did a song and dance number from Chorus Line.
Ooh, is there a reprise coming up?
And no, yes, right after I jump off whatever you jumped off. Yeah, then I'll do it again.
We need to get you and Dr. Bateman together. We get a vaudeville show going here. We can get, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I really, I don't know. Anyways, I really am looking forward to whenever we can have our meetings in person again and just be in one another's presence and can eat dinner together and have meals together and just really get to know each other. But until that happens, anyways, we'll just all long for it. So the first thing I just want to say is that I'm really happy to be serving on this board. I am happy to have been appointed chair, though I am also very kind of nervous about it. Jennifer was absolutely amazing, and I don't know how, honestly, I don't know that any of us could fill Jennifer's shoes. And I don't know that I can fill Jennifer's shoes either, but I'm going to do my best to try. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just happy. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to serve, and I'm looking forward to hopefully doing good work for the board. I think that
we're happy for you to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm kind of excited. I feel like we are at a place where maybe we can kind of redefine, might be too strong of a word, but I think we can really kind of decide how, because we're just in such a place of change. You know, we've had, as Janine mentioned, a lawsuit that we were dealing with for, a long time. And then we had, the sunset, and now we have BHEC. And so we just are kind of at this place where we've gone through a lot of changes, and there's still a lot of changes that are still happening. How are we going to do committees? How are we, exactly what is the work of the board? Now that BHEC has taken over the licensing and the disciplinary actions, and, our duties have kind of been divided, I feel like we have an opportunity to maybe kind of somewhat redefine what we're doing and maybe engage in stakeholders in a different way. And I remember thinking that, I don't know for y'all's board training, especially for the newer people, but I remember at my board training, the one that I went to in Austin, the thing that Governor Abbott said to us, like our commission, is he says, there's two things I want you to do. I want you to follow the rules, and I want you to have great customer service. And that has stuck with me. And I feel like that's probably a good charge for us to have, is to make sure that we are writing rules that protect the public, and that we are following those rules, but that also that we try to have good customer service to our licensees and to the public. And so anyways, I'm just kind of looking forward to maybe just some of the changes that are upcoming, and just ways that we can maybe engage stakeholders better, ways that we can serve the public and serve licensees better. So those are kind of some of the things that have been on my mind, things that maybe I would like for us to do as the board moves forward, is kind of focusing on those areas of just stakeholder engagement and good customer service. I'm really excited because we also recently, Daryl and I got to do a town hall meeting with through TAMFT. I know Russ was in attendance. I'm not sure who else, if there's anybody else who sat in on that. But I'm actually really hoping that we can continue to kind of partner with TAMFT and maybe do some more of these town hall meetings. We are, I know Ken and Jennifer, y'all spoke at TCA in October, November. Okay. Say that again.
I just said yes.
Okay.
We did.
Yes. Ken and I, Ken and I will also be doing a presentation to TAMFT coming up in March. And so I'm excited about that opportunity as well. Anyway, so those are just kind of some of the things that I've been thinking about and trying to brainstorm ideas of ways that we can better engage with our stakeholders and better serve our licensees. So anyway, so let me see here. What else do I have to say? So I guess with that, one of the things that I do think that we probably need to go over is some of the, Sarah's already kind of touched on it in terms of like the changes to the committee work. I guess I should just ask y'all, do y'all want to go over those together? Like go read through kind of what the different like what the different committees do? Like, would that be helpful for us to kind of go through them and to read what the different committees do and maybe brainstorm, look through Sarah's list of the different things that the committees are going to be doing and what kind of reports? Like, would that be helpful, or would y'all rather just do that on your own time?
I think with new folks on the board, it might be good if you want to walk us through that and talk about maybe some of the changes or developments to it.
Okay, let's do that. Then Sarah, do you mind pulling up the document that you sent us? George, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
I would just ask, Madam Chair, as we do that, if you can just let us know what your vision is and if there are any particular areas that you want us to focus on or things that you want to do to leave your mark or your legacy on the board, just tell us as we go through this. That would be a great opportunity.
Okay, I will do my best. I don't know that I've put my thinking cap on enough to know at this point, but I will do my best. Okay. Sarah, are you able? Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so if you'll scroll down a little bit. So I guess probably one of the very first things that I did in October, or actually the early November, whenever I was appointed as chair, is I tried to fill in holes in our committee assignments. So I have made some changes to our committee assignments, but as we are going through this, if there's a committee that you just really want to be on or a committee that you really don't want to be on, please let me know, and if I can make changes, I will. I also assigned committee chairs, not realizing that, so under the old system, like the committee chair, their primary responsibility was just kind of like to run the meeting and to, maybe propose things that we needed to discuss, but the kind of responsibilities of the chair were pretty light. Under the new system, I kind of think that there might be a little bit more of a burden on the chair because I assume, and again, Sarah, you can correct me if you think that this is not right, but like if Sarah needs, somebody needs a member from a committee to weigh in on something, she'll be contacting probably the chair first, and then the chair either, then it's the chair's responsibility to find somebody to do it. I assume that's how it's going to work. And so again, if I've appointed you to be a chair and you feel like you don't think that that extra responsibility is something that you feel up to, that's fine. Just let me know. And again, I will try to be accommodating to you and your schedules. Okay, so for the ethics committee, we have Anthony is going to be chairing that, and we have Russell, George, and myself on that committee, with Ken and Evelyn serving as backups. And so if you'll scroll down a little bit more. And let's go all the way down to just the requirements of the ethics committee. Okay. So again, there's been some kind of changes in the way that this has worked previously. So it used to be that, if I understand correctly, because this is even a little bit before my time, basically all ethics complaints had to eventually go before the board. And this is one of the things that kind of led to the slowdown in ethics complaints being processed. It was one of the things that the Sunset Committee dinged us on. And so when I came onto the board, we were moving to this new procedure where the executive director was able to, like, things were non-jurisdictional, like she was able to kind of like move things a little bit quicker through the process. We created this review team that, if I remember correctly, involved Sarah, Tim, and the attorney, and they would kind of, be able to like use the sanction matrix to be able to kind of, again, move some of these cases along instead of kind of creating this backlog. There is now with BHEC, things have shifted again. And this is my understanding of it and the way that it's going to work. And so Daryl, Sarah, if I convey something that is not correct, please correct me. But it's my understanding that we will get a complaint. in the mail, or we'll get or we'll receive a complaint. The complaint, we'll send a letter to the licensee letting them know that the complaint has happened. It will then go to investigation, and the investigators will investigate and see if there is, and basically write a report and make a recommendation on whether there was a violation found or not a violation found. At this point, I'm not sure who exactly reviews that. Is that Daryl? No, that's the attorney who reviews it, and then somebody else reviews it to find out if there is actually, whether there's a complaint or not a complaint, whether there's a violation or not a violation. Is that correct? Who is it who reviews it?
Goes to legal counsel after the investigator. Yeah.
Okay. So it goes to legal counsel. Legal counsel decides whether or not there was a violation. If they decide there's not a violation, then it moves, it's dismissed, it moves on. If there is a violation, it's my understanding, y'all correct me if this is not right, that it kind of depends on whether that violation was a violation of standard of care. And if there's a violation of like standard of care, how is it worded? It's worded in here somewhere.
If you would need expert testimony in order to prove that violation or that standard of care, it needs to go to a ISC panel.
Okay. And what does ISC stand for?
Informal Settlement Conference.
Okay. And so essentially, there, it sounds like, if I understand this, Daryl, that if it's a standard of care, then it's got to go to an informal settlement conference, which is going to be, that's where the ethics committee will step in. Okay.
Correct.
Or if there's not a violation of standard of care, like somebody just didn't turn in their CEU certificates or something, in that case, staff can settle that on their own, or does it still have to go to an informal settlement conference?
Staff will handle the ISC on their own.
Okay. And so essentially the only things that are probably going to be coming before board members will be things where there's been a violation of the standard of care, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what is that process going to look like? Is it just going to be whenever we have these violations, somebody will reach out to the ethics chair and say, we need a board member?
Yeah, staff will reach out to you and say, hey, we've got a complaint that's going to involve the use of expert testimony if we have to go to SOA hearings. So that means that's a complaint that has to go before the ISC panel, you guys. And then we simply set it up. We're not married to, fixed dates like we've been in the past. We can do it much more quickly. Just basically, as soon as we can get everybody available and together, we can do it.
Okay. Is there a number of board members that have to be involved in that ISC?
I'm trying to think. I think the rules sets a cap at three.
No more than three.
Yeah.
And it can be one to three. So it could be a 1-person, 2-person, or 3-person.
Okay. And who else serves on that ISC besides for the board members?
Nobody serves on the panel. Just the board members. They're the ones that are making the decision. Their staff don't make the decision in those cases.
Okay.
But the rule does require that an attorney from the agency also be in attendance.
Okay. Okay.
In the past, Daryl, those have all been in person. How are we handling that now in the current situation?
Zoom. We're using Zoom. Patrick, have any staff done just a telephonic ISC? Do you know?
I know they've been doing lots of Zoom ones. I don't know if they've done any by telephone, but
okay.
To be honest with you, I feel like the Zoom one actually we get better attendance than I know that when we used to send things out in the mail, and then they'd have to come to us, and people would sometimes not want to drive from Dallas or Houston. So now we've had people show up in their just wake up in their pajamas and show up to some of these things. So it's easier for them to attend, I think.
And would that be Brian joining us with that?
Brian wasn't in his pajamas, if that's what you're asking, but he did. He is conducting the ISC. Yes.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, so the ISC would be Brian. It would be the board member, or at least one board member, and then both the defendant and the respondent.
Not at the same time, but yeah.
Okay.
Both of them would participate in the ISC separately. We don't bring them in like a courtroom together. And then you're also going to have the investigator who investigated the complaint, or the enforcement, one of the supervisors in the enforcement division. You're going to have somebody there that knows that file that you can ask questions of if you have something that can't be answered from the respondent or the complainant. And then on occasion, we may even bring like Sarah in on those. Sometimes we bring in the board administrators in to sit in on that and have a second set of eyes, if you will.
Okay.
And I'm assuming the respondent are allowed counsel to attend as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah, both are actually. Complainants and respondents can bring in attorneys if they want.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about kind of that process and what it looks like? Anthony, are you comfortable serving as chair? Oh, Janine, did you have a question?
I did. This is really more for Daryl. I had a question. Is there any mechanism in place that would allow us to continue Zoom after this is over with, seeing as that it's becoming more economical and you're getting better attendance?
Yes, actually the Open Meetings Act doesn't really kick in on ISCs, so we can continue to use Zoom even if the governor's disaster declaration goes away. The only way that the disaster declaration going away causes problems for board meetings, which are subject to the Open Meetings Act, but not the ISCs. We can continue doing that. This is kind of one of those eureka moments. I'm not sure why I didn't realize that before, why I wasn't doing this at site board before, but this would have been a lot better to be doing it this way.
Thank you.
This is Sarah. I'd like to clarify. So for the Ethics Committee report, and you've seen this at previous meetings, I'm looking for my screen too. I've got too much open. There we go. You've seen this kind of report, a compliance report in October, and staff will put this together for you, and it'll be provided in your board materials. And then you'll also receive a quarterly report in your board materials, and staff will prepare this for you, and I'll send that to you in your meeting materials.
Sarah, if I'm presenting that report, could there be some sort of structure where, I don't know if it'd be you and I or somebody else get together a couple of weeks out and walk through that?
Absolutely.
Anthony, are you comfortable chairing the ethics committee? Are you good?
I found that comfortable and willing are two different things, but I'm going to, I like to learn, so we'll.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, any other questions about the responsibilities being on the ethics committee or
Dr. Merchant?
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind, Dr. Scoma, when you have that meeting, if I might attend with you just so that I can understand the process a little bit better, please, I would appreciate that.
I think especially as we figure out this process and create it, that would be good.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Committee, if we could, yeah. Thank
you, Madam Chair.
Okay, I believe licensing, I'm not sure, which is next on our list, Sarah, licensing and standards? Standards committee, I don't know.
Yes, I think licensing standards was next.
Okay.
Whoops.
So I am chairing that still, and then I have Daniel Parrish and Anthony and Janine with Rich as our backup. And so the licensing standards committee, this basically determines, this committee is about like, what are the standards for licensing? Like what are the requirements? What are the education requirements? What are the clinical requirements? What does somebody need to do to maintain their license? It's just like well, actually that's really more professional development. But licensing, the thing that comes before licensing most often, in the past, the thing that we did most often was people who would apply for their license and maybe they were transferring from another state and from California specifically, that we always seem to have problems with California, but somebody's transferring from California, and do these hours count? Do these hours not count? Do these education requirements count? Do they not count? And so that's kind of been most of the work the Licensing Standards Committee is just looking at these kind of unique cases and trying to figure out, do they meet the Texas requirements? We also saw a lot of like military people who maybe were like chaplains in the military, and then, do those hours count or do they not count? And so just kind of doing that, that was kind of our primary role. And one of the things, basically, I foresee that the Licensing Standards Committee will probably still continue to have to answer those questions for staff. I think it would be awesome if over the next year or so, we could develop kind of a matrix, the same way we've developed a penalty matrix for the disciplinary, for the ethics and disciplinary committees. If we could develop some sort of something similar for licensing, again, to get so that staff can resolve more of these issues on their own, instead of always having to bring it before the board. And actually, one of the things that I'm really excited about with these changes in the committees is that hopefully we can move people through the licensing process quicker, so that people aren't waiting 3 months at least in order to find out whether or not they're going to get, whether their education is going to count or whether their, clinical experience is going to count. So I expect that we will probably have, I know that like at our meetings, generally we had 4 or 5 cases come before the committee at each meeting. So I would expect that there'll probably be something similar between meetings of us, again, staff reaching out to the licensing committee and trying to help us help them kind of resolve these issues. Is that, Sarah, about what you expect?
That's correct.
Okay. However, the other thing that the licensing committee might be doing is trying to answer things like, let me see here. Let me pull up something. Let me look up something really quick. So some things that have maybe kind of come up recently is like in our last meeting, we talked about reexamination and like what exactly reexamination means. And so that might be something that goes before the Licensing Standards Committee, where we might have to do some work between meetings to decide what does it mean to be reexamined. We had an issue kind of come up this last year about double AMFT supervisor candidates and whether or not a supervisor candidate qualifies to be an LMFT supervisor. And so again, that might be something that the Licensing Standards Committee meets about between meetings to kind of come with a recommendation to the board about what it means to be is a AMFT supervisor candidate qualified to be an LPCS or an LMFTS. We've recently had a question about excess practicum hours. And so again, that might be something that the Licensing and Standards Committee meets to discuss. So that would kind of be some of the responsibilities of the Licensing Standards Committee. Questions about that, like what that would look like or what we would be doing? Okay. Okay, the next committee then, and I would imagine the reports that we bring will probably be pretty similar to the reports we've been bringing in the past, which is just like, number of, kind of looking at the backlog of applications, looking at, anyways, y'all seen those reports. I would imagine there's probably not gonna be much changes to those reports. Do you think, Sarah?
Well, it might be a little bit different. My understanding more recently is those activities for those consultations, if you will, with the committee members may not rise to the level of tracking and reporting those numbers to the board.
Okay.
The committee might be looking at the board's website. And if you haven't seen it, here on at bhac.texas.gov on the council's webpage, there's a quick link to timelines. And the council provides a chart on where staff is. So for example, MFT is doing fairly well, keeping up these are the initial response to the different types of processes that staff is working on. This does not include someone who's received a deficiency notice or some other request for information. But so for example, staff is now working on an initial application for a license that was received on November 29th. So if someone's mailed in or uploaded their application online, on December 1st. Staff hasn't begun to look at that yet. So that is probably the major part of the licensing committee reporting. And then if there's other challenges or other issues that need to be dealt with, then we can address those as well. But I don't know that we'd be counting. We looked at 3 transcripts and 2 of them we approved the course. I don't know that that's worth the board members or the committee members' time to track that.
I agree.
And Madam Chair, let me just state, please, I think that chart on the BHEC site is just absolutely incredible. It's come such a long way in being able to identify. When you speak about customer service and somebody can go out and look to see where we are, obviously some of the dates aren't where we want them to be, but the fact that it's come so much further, I know that I'm very appreciative of it, and I thank you. I know you're listening, Daryl, so thank you for the work you've done. Sarah, thank you for the work that you've done on it. And then my second comment would be, where possible, and you see best practices from the other groups in terms of the reporting, I would ask that you bring that forth to this group, and so that we A, might learn from it, and B, might modify our reports so that we have those same best practices.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Daryl.
I'll tell you, Ms. Francis, that is something we are kind of actively doing, working on, trying to figure out who's doing what the best, and then copying that across the spectrum. That's we are trying to do that.
You guys have really picked it up, and I'm just very appreciative of that. And I know that the in absence of one of our fellow board members, I know that citizens of the great state of Texas are very appreciative of what's going on here. So thank you.
Okay. Our next committee is the Professional Development Committee. And currently, Ken is chairing that, but we'll probably have to make a change after February. The Professional Development Committee basically primarily oversees, what their work has primarily been is overseeing the jurisprudence exam. And so usually at every meeting, we have reviewed the jurisprudence exam results and comments. We've done some work between meetings in terms of reviewing the jurisprudence exam questions, updating some of those, making sure that they are consistent with the new laws. Sarah has done a ton of work on that and deserves a huge round of applause for just her work on the jurisprudence exam. But then the committee has come back and kind of added some questions, edited, reviewed, looked at things as well. And so that's kind of the primary responsibility of the Professional Development Committee, and just, looking, over continuing education requirements and those kinds of things. So any questions about the Professional Development Committee and kind of what it does?
I have one, and it has to do with continuing education, and just kind of what is the current thinking about continuing education requirements, certifications, those types of things, because I know it's kind of in transition, and I was just wondering where might it be along this transitory pathway?
I feel like all the transition has pretty much happened. And so I think right now we're in a place where we're kind of like, is this going to work or is this not going to work? So just as kind of a, thinking about the transitions we've been through, one is getting, so we no longer certify CEU providers. So I think there's still kind of a wait and see, like, are we going to have some like huge fallout from that, or is that, things seem to be going okay. And then there's also been some changes in terms of, there used to be a limit on the number of CEUs you could get online. And now you can technically get them all online as long as at least half of them, 15 of them, are synchronous. In other words, it's a training that's, like TMFT, where it's happening live. And so, again, I think we're kind of in a place where we've made all these changes and we're just kind of waiting to see, do these work, do these not work? I don't know. That's kind of
Okay.
a question.
Okay. Yeah, because from the user side, you know, now I'm on this side, but on the user side, there was the CE. You had to be certified to provide CEs, and everybody was kind of used to that. And then it shifted into this. Okay, now if it's close, if it's ballpark, if it seems reasonable, then you're okay. You don't have to be a certified CE provider. And I was under the impression that that was moving toward a certification of provider process. But what you're saying is that's probably not going to happen in the foreseeable future, that during this time, if this approach seems to work, we're going to keep it and we're not going to go back to any kind of a certification of providers, which I'm not saying good, bad, right, wrong. I'm just wondering, is that what I hear you saying with that?
Well, I mean, that would be something that the professional development committee could have a conversation about. You know, do we want to try to, do we want to try to go back to certifying CEU providers, or do we feel like what we're doing is working? And so again, that's something that y'all could look at, and y'all could look at what other professions are doing. You'd probably have to invite, BHEC into that conversation, Daryl into that conversation, to see kind of what the other boards are doing, if they're kind of having the same kind of still kind of angst about not certifying CEU providers. But that would definitely be conversations that y'all could have. I don't know that we've decided that there's a particular direction that we're going towards. So I think that would just be a conversation that y'all would take up.
Okay, good. And I don't have angst over it. I was just
Yeah.
wondering what the thinking was and what the vision is for it. So thank you.
Dr. Barty, that was kind of the big theme of season 3, I think, that you missed, and we had a lot of discussion over that.
Oh man, I'll go back and binge watch. I'll go back and binge watch those seasons and see what.
Yeah, but I'd be very interested in you and Ms. Smith's take on that, coming in as professional members and how that's being received in the field, because we did have some pushback from some of the stakeholders, and it's very much worth discussing and talk about. We don't want to overburden staff. There was a dynamic of staff was processing some things that didn't really have any heft behind them. It was kind of a mirage. People thought there was more certification that was actually going on, and it kind of created a burden for staff. And so the decision was, let's just not pretend. Let's just let it be, I don't want to say Wild Wild West, but we're going to trust folks to do the right thing and then correct it if it doesn't. So.
Yeah, and for example, the Texas Counseling Association, whenever they do any kind of workshops or whatever it is, they certify the presenters, and the presenters have to go through a process of being approved by TCA for CEs with all of that. But that's TCA. That's not a licensing board or anything like that. That's an association that is doing the certification for all that.
I think one of the things too was the fact that if you had $50 and could fill out a form, you could become a CE provider. And so it wasn't effective. I think one of the things that will really help in the future is to give this a year or so and see, do we get complaints from the public, from participants in seminars of that it is not working well, that this presenter is not doing right or whatever. I think it'll really work itself out. One other thing that I've been thinking about for professional development is maybe looking a little bit more, and Russ, probably you and Rich, whoever else is on that, looking a little bit more at some supervision standards and talking about that as well. So just some thoughts.
Good, good.
Madam Chairwoman, I had a quick question. Am I frozen again?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, good. I would like to ask respectfully if I could serve as a backup on Professional Development Committee. I do have a little angst over the CEUs and how that's being done, as well as supervision. So I'd like to serve as a backup on that committee if I could.
Okay, well, and I might even, if Ken rolls off in February, I might be able to appoint you to the committee. So that you're not backup, but you're actually on the committee. Patrick, something you wanted to add?
I'm trying to remember, and Sarah, if maybe you recall, I think one of the reasons for the change to the certification of CE providers was it was a sunset management action requirement. So it was essentially the Sunset Commission saying, or telling these are changes that need to be made, and so they were made in accordance with that. So just as a bit of background, if I remember
Yes.
correctly, because I know it was directed to some of the agencies, I'm trying to remember which ones it was, but I think LMFT was one of them.
Patrick, I think you're correct, if I remember in Sunset as well. However, just because Sunset said it to do it, doesn't necessarily mean that that is our marching orders, as opposed to Sunset said to do it, and we come back that we do it better. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Bateman mentioned that, if we hear complaints about people, there being bad CU providers out there, that, is maybe one other thing that we're listening for. But I think for me, I'm also listening for, are we getting complaints about, people not really doing their CEUs, or people going and, hey, here, you say I did CEUs and I'll say you did CEUs. Like, do we get people trying to just get around the system? And so I think that's one of the other things, is just people misusing or abusing kind of the CEU policy, something else that I'm going to be trying to listen for. But I actually do think, if this is something, again, the professional development committee y'all can tackle, is what do we need to be doing differently about CEUs? Daryl or George, I'm wondering if either of you know if the other boards are still having these same conversations.
I know psychology isn't. I haven't heard anything from, of course, social work just switched over. Their rule change just happened. Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard anything out of the other boards about it. I still get a ton of emails from people wanting to know, how do I get to be a approved CEU provider? I answer 3 or 4 of those a day, it seems like, but no, to answer your question directly, no.
Okay. Patrick, did you want to add something? Okay. Then are we ready to move on to the Rules Committee? Okay. So the Rules Committee, right now, George is chairing that. And then we have Ken and Janine and Rich. And again, I'll probably need to appoint somebody else also to the Rules Committee when Ken rotates off. And so we can go ahead and scroll down. So the Rules Committee essentially is responsible for writing our rules, just for the rulemaking process. So as y'all know, there are some things that are written in statute that we do not have any control over. Those were written by the legislature and we cannot change those, but everything else falls into our rules, and we can make rules around the things that we've been empowered to make rules around. And so they can review existing rules to see if there's changes that need to be made. If one of the other committees would like to make a rule change, they can then send it over to the Rules Committee to have y'all review it as well, and to make a recommendation to the board about whether or not this rule would be appropriate or inappropriate, or helpful or unhelpful. And so essentially, y'all that's the job of the Rules Committee, is to review our rules, to write new rules, to propose new rules. Any questions about that? And again, I would imagine, go ahead.
I was just saying it's fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. So as things come up, as things are maybe brought up by staff or brought up by the public or brought up by licensees, there might be changes, requests that are made to rules. And so there might be times where, again, between meetings, y'all have to meet or get together to research and propose new rules or changes to rules. So that might be, again, doing research on those. What are the other boards doing? What is happening at the national level? What is COAMFT doing? Or what is AAMFT or AMFTRB? What are other states doing? And so again, there might be some research that has to go into some of the rules making process. So any questions or things you would add, Sarah or anyone?
I
Okay. Okay, so those are our 4 committees. Again, if you have any other requests of committees you would like to be on, please let me know and I'm happy to make those changes. And let's see here. Is there anything else that I need to make? Let me just go look at my notes and see if there's anything else I need to announcements regarding the report from the board chair. I don't think so. I think that concludes number 8. Okay, let's look at moving on to number 9, report from the board delegates. George, do you have any reports you would like to give as our delegate to BHEC?
Sorry, trying to come off of mute at this time. I don't have a formal report, Madam Chair. I will say that at the last meeting, we had a very good session, specifically talking about how we can improve on the social workers and their backlog, how we might be able to bring some assistance to the overall administration of BHEC on some thoughts. And it was a great conversation on things that we could do. So I would say that it's clearly moving forward, clearly still in the forming and norming stage of it. But I definitely think that it's set to do some great things. So informal report, nothing formal. I'll make sure that I have one for the next meeting, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay, report from the board administrator.
So I don't have anything specific to report. As you saw earlier on the website, staff is at licensing at about November 29th, which is just a little bit outside our 10 working day element. I noted that November 29th is a Sunday, so of course we're getting applications on 24/7 on the online and that kind of thing. So it's pretty close to where we'd like to have it as far as a 10 working day turnaround. I know that on the investigations and complaint side, there's some new investigators have been hired, and I'm grateful for that. I think there's also still some open positions, and I believe there's some open positions in licensing. The operations from the transition are up and running. And like Daryl said, we're constantly looking for, can we do this better? Can we do it? Can we share the workload? How can we work this out so it's a smoother, better customer service process? The transition is still new, and of course, COVID is still with us. So we're also dealing with the countermeasures that are in place, and in the Austin area, those countermeasures might be increased as we might go to a level 5. So we're dealing with those as best we can, and I appreciate the board members and the public's patience with us as we continue to try to serve. Daryl, do you have something to add?
Yeah, on the COVID front, I know Mr. Francis and I believe Dr. Bateman had gotten an email from me. We have had one incident of an employee testing positive for COVID here in the agency, and we had to take some pretty significant actions to isolate that and make sure that that didn't spread. Being a small agency, I mean, it goes without saying, if that bug gets loose in our staff here, it's going to cause major problems, especially in the licensing division. That's the engine that drives all of this. So I've had to be very, very careful and protective of that. I hate to say the word fortunately, but luckily the individual was not in the licensing division. They were in the enforcement division, which lends itself to working from home much better than the licensing side. But anyway, we've taken some steps. Hopefully that will not impact our operational capabilities too terribly much. But I just want to give you all a heads up. That was the first time we'd been impacted by it, so we had to move pretty quick. And hopefully I didn't move too far to it, but I couldn't afford to let that bug get loose in here.
Madam Chair, I don't know if this would be the appropriate time to ask the question, Ms. Fassel. Last time we met, we saw some data in regards to the investigators, and that there were some investigations that were a little bit older in nature. Will we talk about that at some point on the agenda today, or is it appropriate during the report right now to ask that question?
Today's agenda was prepared as an ad hoc in-between meeting to cover your review of public comment for certain rules and to accommodate the need for certain elections to cover vice chair and council delegates. So I did not include on this agenda, for example, the quarterly reporting that you'll receive on January 22nd of the complaint process and where we are on certain cases. If you have a specific question, if I know off the top of my head, I'll be glad to answer it. Or if I don't, I'll be glad to research it and get that information to you.
If you would please, or if we can put it on the next agenda. If I remember correctly, there were approximately 3 or 4 cases that had dated back several years, and they were of a higher severity level. And I just want to know, how are we progressing against those cases? So I know overall we're making progress, but the ones that were historically long and a higher severity nature, those are the ones that I'm concerned about. And where do they currently stand? Just so that they don't fall into a black hole, please. So if we can talk about that at the next agenda, next meeting.
Okay, I can say that I did check the database in the last week or so, and I saw some activity on 2 of those cases.
Good.
I will search further and provide you more details.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Okay. So next, any other conversation, discussion? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question. Are we operating currently fully staffed? Do we have everybody that we're allowed to have?
No, ma'am, we don't. We've got some vacancies in the licensing division, and we have vacancies in the enforcement investigators and a paralegal. We're trying to fill, I think, 4 or 5 investigator positions and 1 paralegal, and I think 2 LNPs and 1 administrator, administrative assistant position.
An LMP is a permit specialist who reviews the applications.
Okay, and we're actively looking?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. Then let's move on to number 11, discussion and possible action regarding future priorities and activities of the board. I think we've already had some conversation about this, but does anybody have anything else they would like to discuss?
Madam Chair, I just had one question from earlier on when the vote occurred for Ms. Smith to replace Dr. Bateman. Is that change immediate, or is Dr. Bateman, are you planning on being at the January council meeting?
I had planned to be in the January council meeting, but at this point, till I'm gone.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, then I will open it up for public comment.
So at this time, if you have, if you're an attendee and you have signed in with a computer, please raise your hand if you'd like to provide public comment. I will call on you and give you permission to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So we'll get started with that. Dr. Jody Elder, you have public comment?
Yes, I do. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I just want to start by saying, although I have been present in these meetings in the past as the appointed liaison representing the Texas Counseling Association, I no longer serve in that position. And this morning, any comments I make are as a licensee and stakeholder only, as I no longer represent TCA. So first of all, I just want to say thank you all so much for carefully considering my public comments submitted regarding the proposed rule changes. I really admire, that's one of the things I admire most about this board, is your careful consideration of stakeholders. And also, thank you very much for all that you're doing to continue to engage stakeholders. Your presence at the recent TCA conference in November was very much appreciated. Dr. Bateman and Mrs. Smotherman, appreciate your presence and representation there to TCA members. Great job. And also the TMFT Town Hall. So thank you for everything you're doing to continue to reach out and engage stakeholders. I also want to say welcome the new board members to the board. I'm so excited to have such esteemed members with such great expertise added to the board. I think you have so much to contribute, and I'm very excited about your appointments. Also, I want to say congratulations to Dr. Merchant on facilitating your first board meeting as the chair. You did a wonderful, wonderful job. So I know that you're probably shaking in your boots a tad, but no need, because you're doing a great job. So thank you for your service. And thank you to Mrs. Smith for your willingness to serve as the BHEC representative. I know that's added time on your schedule away from your private practice. But I think you'll do a great job, as you've already done a wonderful job of interacting with that council. Dr. Scoma, thank you for being willing to step into the vice chair position. That too is a big job, and I appreciate your willingness to do that. And Mr. Francis, thank you for your willingness to continue to be the public member appointed to the BHEC Council. You are such a great asset to the board, and I'm really happy to see you continue in that role. I look forward to seeing the establishment of a new homeostasis on this board, as there's been so much change, as Dr. Merchant pointed out, with the lawsuit and then sunset and now BHEC. And so really look forward to finding a new equilibrium as we move forward. I would like to just make the suggestion, if it's not already happening, that the JP exam include items that cover BHEC rules. Because as licensees, we are now obligated to function under not only MFT board rules, but also BHEC rules. And I'm not sure licensees are fully aware of that change. And having those questions on the JP exam would highlight the need to become acquainted with those rules as well. I really, really appreciate the consolidated rule books. I think those are fabulous assets for licensees to make sure we're following the rules. And I appreciate that BHEC rules are included in those, but I do think some questions on the JP exam about the BHEC rules would be helpful. Also, I want to say that I really appreciate the chart regarding licensing timelines. I think that's fabulous transparency on the website, as well as I really appreciate the board's emphasis on customer service. I think that goes a long way in moving forward in that way. So that leads into my next question, which is I recently received an email from the LPC board saying that they are engaging licensee expert stakeholders to be involved in the complaint resolution process. So I'm curious to see if this board is going to be considering that as well, where LMFTs who are practicing could be engaged, if that's something that you intend to do. I think it would go far to demystifying the complaint resolution process. So I'm just wondering if that's something considered here. The other thing is I really appreciate the fact that there is an agenda item, which I assume will be a permanent agenda item, regarding reporting about BHEC activities, because the agencies are now, the board and BHEC are so intimately entwined now, and not every LMFT board member is going to be listening to the BHEC meetings. And so I think it's so important to have a representative come back and say, here's what's happening, you know, in the BHEC arena, so that you could understand the implications or changes that that might have for the LMFT board in particular. And last, I just want to thank you all for your service and your great flexibility, particularly for the staff in continuing to serve during a pandemic. This has been such a trying time for us all, and I just appreciate your time and your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elder.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Elder, for your comments. Sarah, did you want to say something else?
I was just going to move on to the next person. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Dr. Jason Martin, you're able to unmute if you have public comment.
Hello, Dr. Jason Martin, liaison for TAMFT to the board. And I just wanted to come on and say thank you to the board members, as always, for the careful consideration of the management of our license in the state. I appreciate well, first of all, I am very thankful for the new board members. I'm very excited for the new board members, and I was thrilled to hear of their appointment a few months ago. And so I want to thank you both I want to thank you all for agreeing to serve this very important role and the important functions that the board serves. It's been a pleasure over a number of years to observe the board and all it does. And there was a time when people rolling off and new people rolling on gave me a bit of anxiety about what that would mean for the board. But this board works so well, and the people kind of tend to bring people in who are very competent and faithful to the service of the public as it relates to marriage and family therapy. And so I look forward and so I don't have as much anxiety about that anymore, even less so because I know the work that Dr. Barty and Ms. Smith have done in the past, and that gives me a lot of confidence in their roles here in the future. And Dr. Merchant, your leadership on this board, I'm really looking forward to seeing everything that you're able to guide this board to do. I just want to put out there that as TAMFT has continued to grow and evolve, that we are obviously very interested in everything that goes on with the board, and that we appreciate the transparency that this board has shown over the last number of years. And I know that with some of the, I guess, changes to the way that some committees are done that was discussed in the last meeting regarding having fewer committee meetings where the public is involved. I still would like to emphasize that the transparency piece is very important. And while the full board, I understand, makes the final decision on certain things, bearing witness to the process that those committees go through and the deliberation and the conversations, that actually is incredibly helpful for stakeholders to have an understanding of why certain decisions are made. As a liaison to this board, my job is a lot easier if I can say not only what the board decided, but why it decided a certain way. I kind of take it as part of my responsibility to help my constituencies understand that process. And so I would urge the board to keep that in mind when discussing what to do with the committees. Again, thank you all very much.
Dr. Jason got clocked. I think that's a first for this committee. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Sarah?
James Harriet.
Good morning. My name is James Harriet. I'm a member of the Governmental Liaison Committee of the Christian Counselors of Texas. I'd just like to thank the board for your diligence and your concerted efforts in carrying out all the various duties that you have. I really enjoyed finding out a little bit about each of the board members today and your various adventures. Anyway, we appreciate what you do so much. God bless and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harriet.
I see no other raised hands for public comment. I do have a person who attended by phone. So caller, do you have public comment?
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have public comment?
Okay. Yes, I do. My name is Pamela Berminder. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and approved supervisor in private practice in Cedar Park, Texas. I am also a member of the governmental liaison and continuing education committee of the Christian Counselors of Texas, which I am representing them today, and also myself as an individual. I wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge the significant challenges that the board and staff have, and when I say the MFT board and also the BHEC and the staff, in responding to this major transition and trying to make it work as smoothly and in the transition as possible, all while doing this during a pandemic that has added its own challenges. But I also wanted to say that I appreciate how I've attended many of these meetings, and I really appreciate how the board has come together to maintain the integrity of the MFT profession and working so diligently and sometimes really long hours to deliberate and to carefully consider the new challenges that come forth and trying to make the best decision that's providing that balance of what the public needs and also maintaining the integrity of the MFT profession. Thank you for taking this opportunity to review and explore how you're adapting or enhancing processes and procedures. And for the staff who is working so diligently with the backlog, with the incoming responses, and trying to maintain health and wellness in the whole process. And then finally, I wanted to mention that we do have the Christian Counselors of Texas Conference for 2021 is coming up on February 18th through 20th. And I'm hoping it'll be too late perhaps for this conference, but I'm hoping that in the future, there might also be some consideration from one or more board members or to perhaps participate in giving a presentation to our conference attendees that is help, because we have LPCs, MFTs, social workers, and psychologists that also are members of our association. Thank you again, and God bless.
Thank you, Pam, for your comments, and we would be happy. You're welcome to reach out to us. I'm sure that we'd be more than happy to have somebody come and speak at your conference. Okay.
I see no other public comment.
Okay. In that case, we are moving on to number 13, announcements and comments not requiring board action, such as statements regarding conferences or other recent or upcoming events. I don't think I have anything to add. Does anybody else have any further discussion? Okay, in that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, can we make sure you have the next meeting dates, please?
Yes, so we will have a shared BHEC meeting on, is that January 11th, Sarah?
12th.
12th. January 12th. I anticipate that will probably be a fairly short meeting because we just need to review the penalty matrix. And that will occur either at 11:30 or sometime after 11:30, is that correct, Daryl?
That's correct. That's what we're planning so far.
And then we will have our regular meeting, our long, probably, all day meeting will be January 22nd. And that is a Friday. And I anticipate that will be via Zoom because I assume that there will continue to be a emergency declaration.
Thank you. Apologies for the interruption.
Madam Chair, in the event the disaster declaration is not continued, the way we would have to work it if y'all wanted to do a Zoom meeting is you would need to come here to Austin, and we would set you up here in the office because wherever the presiding officer is at has to be open to the public. The rest of you can appear via Zoom, but I've got to have the presiding officer really here because I have the infrastructure here, and then it has to be open to the public is the way the law is outside of a
sir.
disaster declaration.
Okay. Okay.
I anticipate the declaration to still be in effect at that time though.
Yes, I do too. Okay, any other further questions, comments?
I want to throw out, is that ever something, Daryl, that the vice chair could be there physically and she not, since I live in Austin, that might be an easier.
Actually, that's a good point, because the way the law reads is the presiding member, or the member presiding over the meeting. It doesn't actually say the chair or the presiding member appointed by the governor. So whoever, we could select somebody for that particular meeting and say you're the presiding member. Of course, when you get in the meeting as the presiding member, you get to delegate whoever you want to. So it's kind of it'd be a kind of a shell game, but it works.
A shell game that would save you a 3-hour trip. So if you ever need to do that, Dr. Marchant, feel free.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. Might take you up on that. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, a motion to adjourn an outstanding meeting with our newest board members and our returning board members. Thank you for presiding over it. I'd like to close it out at this point.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second with a welcome to our new board members. And I'm only sorry we can't all go to dinner tonight and get to know you better, but that day will come, and looking forward to it.
Yes. Okay. In that case, without any further discussion, let's take a vote. If you would like to adjourn, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for your attendance today.
Thank you.
Thank you.